Hello, welcome to Glasgow Rangers Nation with me, your host, Owen James, the channel that brings you all your Rangers needs. Obviously, please smash that sub, like and share the video. Guys, welcome along. Yep, it is Tuesday, the 14th of December, and we are 14 days into the January transfer window, 2 weeks into the January transfer window, and still no movement on the signings for Rangers. Still no players incoming, still no players outgoing either. Now we're going to talk a little bit about two possible January exits that have been spoken about in the media. So we are going to speak a little bit about that. We're also going to speak a little bit about McKinnon and what he's been saying about the fact that he was desperate to get away from Rangers to get some first team football. And a bit of an interesting one. Sort of Heart and Hand kind of flagged this up on X earlier, and I kind of really sort of found it fascinating. It's what basically from what Clement said about Bayy Rice not being on the bench on Sunday, despite the fact obviously that Bayy Rice has been promoted to the first team squad. A little look at Bayy Rice and perhaps what his future holds at the club as well. But let's start off with those January transfer exit rumours. Like, we all love a January transfer exit rumour, don't we? And as Patrick Stewart said, look, January transfer window is tough. It is a situation where people don't want to sell their best players. Clubs, it is a seller's market at the end of the day. Teams can demand what they want for players, and if you're desperate enough, you pay the money, don't you? And there's been some pretty dodgy buys down the years, across all the leagues in England and Scotland in that January transfer window in desperation stakes, isn't there? Really, there has been some desperation stakes. Now, the two rumours that are currently doing the rounds surround two players leaving Rangers this January transfer window. Now, they are Cyril Desa, the misfiring striker, and Rabbi Matondo, the ever-injured winger. So, look, I think, listening to you guys out there in live chat, and we do lives, listening to and reading social media, and I get that social media is a bit of a poisonous place. I understand that, 100%, of course I do. But look, there is, I think, a general feeling. I don't think people will be overly bothered if Rabbi Matondo left or if Cyril Desa actually left the club. Matondo has missed an awful lot of football. He's missed an awful lot of time, and every season he seems to, have to take a number of games off due to injury. And it's something that, Rangers have got to get away from. We've got to stop, holding on to these players who are constantly injured and constantly out, and paying wages for players who are not even, even on the bench, let alone out in the park. And, given the fact that obviously Rabbi Matondo earns a substantial amount of money, I think it's over 20 grand a week. It certainly would not be one that we'd miss. And also the fact that I think, the lad has never, ever really lived up to his potential, or what his perceived potential was, or is, or could be, or maybe, I don't know. Obviously a couple of goals mixed in there that were really good. Obviously the one against Celtic was spot on. But look, this is it. This is where we're at, Now, according to the reports in the media, Matondo who was linked with a summer loan move to Norwich, has now been linked with a move to Italy. Two Italian teams are apparently interested in the services of Rabbi Matondo, according to media reports, initially on a loan. Now, I know what you're saying. Look, we need the money, but look, it's still getting part of the wages, at least, off the wage bill. And I think that any loan would be a loan with options or obligations to buy, put into contract, and that's certainly, I think, the way that Niels Koppen will now operate. And unfortunately, I think, the situation we're in is that January is an area where lots of loans are done because, like I said, people don't want to commit large finances to different players, not knowing what next season holds, not knowing what the end of the season holds for them, and what league they'll be in or what competitions they'll be able to qualify for, etc., etc. Now, the two teams in question are Torino and Lecce in Italy, who have both apparently been scouting and casting an eye over Rabbi Matondo. Again, I don't think this would be any great loss. It wouldn't be a massive loss for me, I don't think, if Matondo moved on. I think, look at the squad. You've got Cortez, obviously on his way back from injury. Bayrami can play out there. Hiefte can be pushed further forward. Ridvan can be pushed further forward. And it, I think, would be a way to obviously start to look at lowering that wage bill. I think, it's something we still need to do. It's, it's a situation that has been continually spoken about. They need to lower the wage bill and get get some of this dead wood off the squad. And Matondo, I think, would be prime dead wood, wouldn't he? Cyril Desa is another example of dead wood as well. Another player who I think does need to go now. It's been very staunchly rumoured that he's not happy with playing a bit part role. He believes he should be starting now. I mean, look, fair enough. I mean, let's face it, every footballer believes they should be starting, don't they? But, when you've got Hamza Igaman ahead of you, who is an absolute class act, and you've got Deno ahead of you, I mean, I think realistically, Desa is really talking absolute pish, thinking that he's better than Deno, he's better than Igaman. I mean, Igaman is, he is just a quality player. Both of those guys are quality players. Deno and Hamza have really, turned up and showed up well in recent games, and when they've played together, they've actually played really well. And look, we haven't got a lot of bright sparks at the moment at the club, and we've got to kind of really cling on to those bright bits of the club, and Hamza has definitely become a bright spark this year, has definitely become one of those players that we all look forward to watching, and that is something we've got to hang on to, because let's face it, there's not a lot else, is there? And Hamza is quality. He is a very talented footballer. He's scored an awful lot of goals very recently. He's done well in Europe, scoring in the European competition, which is obviously a lot harder than scoring in Scotland. So, that's fantastic. And Deno, I think, has come back, and now he's fit. We're seeing the best of him. We're seeing what we paid the £6 million for. He's certainly, he's starting to live up to that price tag. And I think the jury is certainly moving in on Deno and saying that he's a hit, or moving towards being a hit, perhaps not there yet. But Desa's is just the misfiring Nigerian, isn't he? I mean, I've heard the D9, the Desa all that. And I know that certain podcasters who, shall remain nameless, who for unexplicable reasons think Desa is a good footballer. I mean, I don't get it myself. We'll be sad if Desa leaves, but I mean, look, let's look at it this way. He misses an awful lot of very easy chances. He's culpable for a loss of a lot of points as well. I mean, if you go back to the Ross County game last season that we lost 3-2, he misses 2 absolute gilt-edged chances in that game. The Hearts game at the end of last season, again, 5 misses. The Hearts game at the start of this season, misses again. These are all games where we could have picked up points, and he cost us those points with his misses. Now, he's a player as well who just genuinely cannot be relied upon. And I think one of the things for me that stands out is his attitude on the field. Yes, he does work hard and run around a lot, but he falls over far too much. He spends too much time on his backside moaning. He doesn't have enough. He's offside, and largely the offside rule is sketchy at best. Whereas you look at Hamza and Deno, they try to stay on their feet, they try to engage defenders, go round defenders. And I know notice Hamza, he will roll tackles, he'll go with tackles, he'll keep running. Whereas that Desa's would fall on his arse. The other good thing I think we see with Deno and Hamza is there's a confidence from the midfield that there isn't there when Desa's plays. The midfield, I think, when Hamza's up top and when Deno's up top, they know the ball will hold, the ball will stick, it will not come flying back at them, and it gives them a chance to bomb on and get past that front striker and cause the opposition defence issues, create chances, which obviously is something we've needed to do. And also it helps with breaking down the low block. If you're overwhelming them with midfielders and the attackers holding the ball, and your midfielder overwhelming that low block as well, it creates more problems for the opposition. The difference been when Desa's plays there, they're not confident the ball will stick. His movement is a lot slower. His movement is a lot poorer. He's a lot more static and more easy to mark. And you don't see the midfield burst on past him enough because of the fact that they've got no confidence in him holding the ball up. So, I mean, and the other thing you've got to consider is the guy who will be 30 next year, he isn't going to get any better. Also, we're paying a third choice striker £27,000 a week. So, if this is a player we can get off our books in January, it will be a massive step forward for the club. It will free up £27,000 in wages. It hopefully will bring in some transfer fee. Now, Cagliari, according to reports in Italy, are still interested in Desa's. And I think, hopefully the club, Rangers that is, are willing to do some sort of deal to get him out. Something to actually say, well, look, yes, we're probably not going to get back the £4.5 million we paid for him, but you've got to know when it's time to cut your losses. You've got to know when it's time to say, right, hands up, we're not going to get that money back. We made a mistake. It's time to let him go. If we can get 2.5 for him, something like that, it would be an absolute bonus for me, because you're also shifting 27 grand a week off the wages for a player, who is barely featuring, thank goodness, at the moment. So, look, for me, two strong rumours here. And look, I think we all know and we all expect that there will be movement out in this January transfer window. There will be movement out in the summer. There needs to be, because there's a lot of deadwood in this squad that needs to be got rid of. So for me, this is a situation that needs to be addressed, and hopefully it will start to be addressed in this window. And those two exiting would be a very good start. And do you know what? Not missed at all. I genuinely don't believe we'd miss Matondo or Desa's in the slightest. Anyway, let's move it along a little bit, shall we? Now, Cole McKinnon, who last year played a number of minutes for the first team, obviously got some games in the league, and most notably played in the Estadio de la Luz in the first leg of the Europa League tie against Benfica in the 2-2 draw out there. And it seemed like, McKinnon was progressing well, that he'd be getting first team opportunities, that he'd be a player that, that would have a part to play in the first team this season, but he certainly isn't. He hasn't had that part. He hasn't featured at all. Like a lot of the young players, the young players really are not getting a look in under Clement, and I don't really want to start that debate again, that discussion again. But I think, with the paucity in talent at times in this squad and the lack of players, I think, the young players, and there are, in my humble opinion, some very good young players at this club. Cole McKinnon being one of them, Robbie Fraser, another one who left on loan to Livy, Bayy Rice, Paul Ncio, Archie Stevens, Zach Lovelace, Finley Curtis. There are players there, I believe, who could honestly play a part for this first team squad, and I just wish the manager would have the balls to actually play them. Now, Cole McKinnon, speaking about his move to Ayr, said that that one of the reasons why he left on loan was that he was desperate for first team football. That he felt that his chances, had been kind of restricted at Rangers, and that he hadn't perhaps got the chances that he really wanted to, and he feared that he wasn't going to get the opportunity to play. I think for me, it's sad, isn't it, that this has had to happen, that a player who is a very promising, talented footballer, is a quality footballer, has had to leave the club and has got to go elsewhere to get first-team opportunities. Now, yes, it's good that he's gone to a club in Scotland. Yes, it's good that he's going to get first-team players. But, a player like Cole McKinnon, I would have loved to have seen get an opportunity in the first team squad. I mean, you can't tell me that Kieran Dowell is a better player than Cole McKinnon. And I think McKinnon could have certainly brought something to this squad, and it's really kind of a sad reflection on Rangers' inability to use their young players and to give their young players an opportunity to succeed, that players like Cole McKinnon are leaving. Now, Cole McKinnon is out of contract in the summer. No one-year deal was offered, or no extension has been offered before he exited. Now, whether the club are planning to do something when he returns, I don't know, but this could be one of the last times we'd seen Cole McKinnon in a Rangers shirt. This could be his swan song. He could be exiting the club this summer for nothing, for a player again that we've invested money in. I mean, okay, there might be a tribunal fee, I suppose, but it won't be perhaps his true worth if he'd actually had some first team opportunities. And like I said, it's interesting, isn't it, that he's coming out and saying that he was desperate for first team opportunities and didn't feel that he'd get the chance at Rangers. It's sad. It really is a sad reflection of what the manager is doing to this club at this moment in time. Now, one interesting point, obviously, that was raised at the weekend by, I think it was Stevie Clifford in the press conference, was around Bayy Rice. Bayy Rice, who, when he was at Motherwell, was described as a more promising talent than Lennon Miller. Lennon Miller, who is now a player who is likely to head down south in the summer transfer window for a substantial fee, making Motherwell an awful lot of money. Now, the manager, when he was asked about Bayy Rice, said that that he felt that that with hindsight, obviously, as the press were talking, that it would have been easy to bring in Bayy Rice with hindsight, given the result and given how the game went. But he said that obviously they didn't have hindsight and they had to go with what they thought was best for the game and going with the more experienced talent. Now, to me, there's a couple of things that are coming out of this. One, if you haven't got the confidence to believe that you can put the worst team in Scotland away and then bring young players on when you're 2-3 up, I think there's a big issue there. With the manager, there's a real big issue that if he doesn't feel that we can actually put people like St Johnstone to the sword, who are probably one of the worst teams in Scotland and probably one of the worst teams in Europe right now. Heart and Hand put out a tweet yesterday, which I thought was very interesting. They said, "This was very interesting to me. My argument is that we had to play Nsiala through necessity and won in a canter. So why would it have been a risk to have Rice or Curtis on the bench and getting 20 minutes? If we can't play young lads in games versus a doomed side at Ibrox, then when can we?" And I think this is an absolutely superb point by David Edgar. I think it probably is David that wrote the tweet. If Finlay Curtis and Bayy Rice are not going to be on the bench against the likes of Ross County, against the likes of St Johnstone, going forward, I know Bayy Rice was on the bench against Ross County when we beat them at Hampden, but if those players are not going to be on the bench and are not going to get the opportunity, when are they ever going to get the chance, and are they ever going to get the chance? And people talk, Clement, you listen to Clement talk, and he talks about them not being ready. Well, how do you know they're actually not ready? Because you can't see in training realistically whether a player is ready to play first team football, because the difference between training and even between a B team game and a first team game, between training and a first team game, is huge. It's massive. So for me, this is a really great point, and I think Clement really needs to start showing some more courage, starting to show some more balls. The guy hopefully knows that his job is on the line, and hopefully knows that if he doesn't sort himself out very quickly, he's going to be out of work, and if it goes wrong at Rangers, I think he's going to struggle to get another job, to be honest with you, given how badly it's currently going. Bayy Rice is a top talent. He is a quality player. He's a player who's always been identified coming through the system as being a future talent at the club. Now, why is he not being given that chance? Finlay Curtis, who is absolutely ripping it up for the B team, and I know B team football is nowhere near as hard as the A team, but when you're short of wide players with speed who can make an impact, why not give Finlay Curtis 20 minutes against St Johnstone, half an hour against Ross County? In these games, why not put them on there? Because I tell you something, they would show more heart, more bottle, more fight than a lot of those first team players. I mean, I honestly believe that Bayy Rice as a player, having seen him for the Scottish under-21s, play in the B team, play that game against Livy, was it 2 seasons ago, 1 season? I can't remember what it was now, but it was a while ago. The lad looks a class act. His use of the ball is very good. His tackling is very good. His reading of the game is very good. I'd go as far as to say that had he had the first team experience and the number of games that Connor Barron has had, I would say that Bayy Rice would be a better player than Connor Barron. I think there's a better natural level of talent in Bayy Rice than there is in Connor Barron. And I'm not saying that Barron's rubbish. I'm not dissing Barron. I'm not saying that he's hopeless. I'm not saying we shouldn't play him. I'm just saying that I think one of our own, I'm trusting in one of our own, and that's what Bayy Rice is better than what we've actually gone out and paid money for. This is something Rangers badly need to address. One, if they're going to be serious about the transfer trading model, because young players coming through the system, coming through the academy, are players that basically are pure profit. And also the future is, if we genuinely don't have the money to compete with Celtic, as we start, and the money to go out and buy players, we need to start to produce our own players. We can't start creating them in the lab. Scary. Dr. Einstein and Dr. Frankenstein and whatever. But yeah, Bayy Rice, and for me, Archie Stevens, and also Finlay Curtis and NCO and all these young players, Zach Lovelace. I think it's a damn disgrace and a damn shame they're not getting chances against the poorer teams. Now, I'm not saying necessarily put them on the bench on Wednesday against Aberdeen or against Celtic at Parkhead, or in some of the tougher ties in Europe. I'm not saying that for a minute, but what I am saying is when we play St Johnstone, when we play Hearts, when we play Killie, when we play those weaker teams in Ross County, in Scotland, why are they not on the bench and why are they not getting a chance? At the end of the day, does Kieran Dow really need to come on for 3 minutes or 9 minutes or however long he ended up playing the other night? Does Cyril Dessers really need to come on at that point? No, they don't. I'd much rather see Finlay Curtis come on than Cyril Dessers, Zach Lovelace than Cyril Dessers. I'd rather see Bayy Rice come on than Kieran Dowell. These are players that have a future hopefully have a future in Rice and Curtis and Lovelace. These are class acts. These are good footballers. These are talented footballers. They're better. They are long-term better prospects than Dessers, than Dowell. And yes, they may make mistakes, but they'll develop and they'll get better from them. Whereas Dowell and Dessers won't, because of the age they're at, the stage of their career they're at, etc., etc. So for me, I think the manager, I think was very disingenuous in what he said, and completely contradicted himself yet again in a press conference. Something that Philippe Clement continues to do is contradict himself all the damn time. And, he'll say one thing and then he'll go back on that a little bit, and you'll kind of, if you go back and say, well, actually, and I think, this needs to be challenged a little bit, go back and say, well, actually, Philippe, 2 press conferences ago, you said X. Now you're saying Y. Well, which one is it? You can't have it both ways. You can't have your cake and eat it. You've got to have it one way or the other. And I think Clement at times completely contradicts himself with what he says. He talked about giving young players an opportunity when he first came to the club. He hasn't. Ross McCausland has, but that's because Steve Davis had already picked him. No real other young player has had that opportunity to break through, and that's down to him. And there's been games, certainly been games where we could have actually brought them on. The Killy game, for example, the Ross County game, the St Johnstone game. So there have been games where the young players could have come on and been tried and been tested. You're never going to find out if these players are good enough if you don't actually use them in these games. So for me, the manager is missing a massive opportunity, with some very talented young footballers that are coming through. And I get there's a sentiment out there from Rangers fans now that they say the academy is a waste of money, that we're not bringing through players, the players not good enough. I don't think we can say that until we've actually seen these players have the chance to play. Bayy Rice, Zach Lovelace, Finlay Curtis, Leighton Grant, Paul Uncio, Archie Stevens, players like this that are actually probably very talented footballers. I mean, Archie Stevens is a player that's been looked at by clubs south of the border. Zach Lovelace, when he was 15, played minutes in the Championship, which is a stronger league than the Scottish Premier League. So look, I don't think we can say they're not good enough, and I think the manager is missing a massive opportunity. And that's another one. Why was Zach Lovelace at 15 good enough to play in the English Championship, yet isn't apparently ready to play in the SPL? It doesn't make any sense to me. It makes absolutely zero sense. Anyway, guys, thank you very much for watching Glasgow Rangers Nation. As always, on the way out, please smash the like, sub, share, comment, do all that great stuff for me. Thank you for watching. And remember always, please never, ever forget, we are the people.